Chapter 32 Ernesto Ernesto woke up feeling exhausted. He had not been able to sleep since Santiago's kidnapping 5 days ago. The entire event had been nothing short of traumatizing. The vampires taking his precious son, and then Anya. Dios mío. He still didn't understand what had happened to her. The moment he saw those obsidian eyes, he was certain they were all going to die. It didn't matter to him that she had managed to regain her senses in time to let them escape. It was her fault that they had been in that situation in the first place. It was now obvious to him that she was, in fact, a demon, a creature from hell sent to wreak violence and havoc upon his family and his son. Isabella's greatest gift to him. He wasn't even sure how Santiago would emotionally and mentally recover from the images he had witnessed that night. When they came home, Santiago had been in a state of utter shock, barely uttering a word. Ernesto cried into his son's blonde hair, which was drenched in dirt and rainwater. He wrapped his arms around Santiago and swore he would never let his son go again. The two of them fell asleep on the couch that night, but despite the lights being on, they still dreamt of monsters. It wasn't until the next day that Santiago found his voice again and began asking uncomfortable questions. Did you know Anya was a vampire? How long have you known? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't she tell me? Ernesto answered his son honestly. After everything Santiago had gone through, it was the least he deserved. Yes, I knew Anya was a vampire. I've known since I've arrived. I didn't tell you because it wasn't my secret to share. And she didn't tell you because she was scared, he thought. But he said, vampires lie. To Ernesto's surprise, Santiago seemed to accept his answers with a maturity beyond his years. Yet the hurt behind his eyes still lingered. Slowly, the carefree light that had always reflected in Santiago's eyes began to dim. Ernesto often caught him staring absent-mindedly outside or idly swirling his food around during mealtimes without actually eating. The sight filled Ernesto with deep worry. On Sunday evening, Ernesto told his papa that he wanted to return to school the next day. Ernesto was shocked and protested. Are you sure? Yeah, I need something to do, Santiago said. Ernesto understood then. Santiago needed to return to his routine, to his friends, and to some semblance of normalcy. So he agreed. All right, if you're sure. When Monday morning arrived, Ernesto's heart ached as he watched his precious son put on his school blazer with trembling hands. The kidnapping had happened only a few days ago, and everything seemed to be moving too quickly. You don't have to go, Santiago. You can stay home. I can't stay home forever, Papa. I'll be fine. Despite the pain in his heart, Ernesto tried to muster a smile for his son as he watched him head out the door, his fists clenched as he watched him leave. This was all the vampire's doing. He vowed never to let her come near Santiago again. He just wished his own father would agree with him. Even though Javier had only been minorly injured by Anya, her scratches had not been very deep. He had spent the weekend restlessly pacing around La Hacienda and sending out patrols in search of her. Ernesto was furious. He couldn't understand it, and arguments had erupted. What are you going to do if you find her? He yelled. I'm telling you right now, if she steps a single foot back inside this house, I'm taking Santiago and leaving. So you want me to just leave her to her own devices and let her wreak havoc around the city? My city? Use your head. We need to locate her before someone else does. Ernesto had stormed out after that, feeling his father wasn't being entirely truthful. Javier's desire to locate Anya didn't seem solely about protecting the city. It felt like he was being driven by something more personal. Ernesto suspected that Javier was under some dark vampire spell, making him care for Anya. He hadn't forgotten the tender moment he had witnessed between them. Javier cupping Anya's cheek and her tears falling onto his calloused thumb. Ernesto shook his head. It wasn't right. There was a time when Ernesto might have understood this. At one point, he too believed that the girl, Anya, was misunderstood, and even felt indebted to her for saving his life. There had been a moment when he wondered about the suffering that he had caused the faraway look in her eye. In fact, he had a feeling that if their interrupted, peaceful routine had continued, he too might have eventually fallen under the same spell that seemed to grip both his father and his son. But that was in the past. He knew better now. He understood exactly what the beast was capable of. If they allowed her back into their home, she would get them all killed. And Virgen Maria help him, he would not allow that. By Wednesday afternoon, his prayers seemed to be answered. He had come upstairs for his daily checkup on his father. Normally, he would be find Javier on the phone, coordinating the search for the monster, but that wasn't the case this time. His father, who usually paced the room, was now outside, slumped in his balcony chair, feet up on an ottoman. An open bottle of mezcal sat on a circular side table, along with a barro shot glass, a pack of Marlboro red cigarettes, and an ashtray. Immediately, Ernesto knew something had happened. He approached his papa from behind cautiously, as though he were a sleeping lion. ¿Qué pasó? Ernesto asked, a few steps behind his father. Javier did not turn to face his son. Instead, he exhaled a stream of smoke, then placed the still-burning cigarette in the ashtray and lifted his arm behind him, revealing a note in his hand. His tone was somber as he spoke. You got your wish, mijito. Ernesto slowly took the folded note from his father's hand, watching Javier pour another shot of mezcal into his ticalero. The note felt warm, as if Javier had been clutching it for hours, which made Ernesto anxious. He took a deep breath and slowly unfolded the note to read it. Javier, I'm sorry for everything that happened that night, and for breaking the vow I made to you, and through you, breaking my vow to Ernesto and Santiago. Even if I lived 1,000 lifetimes, I would never be able to repay you for taking in someone like me. But if I'm going to try, I need to understand what happened to me that night, so I'll be going away for a while. I know you're probably angry that I'm telling you this all in a letter, but I knew that if I told you in person, you'd try to convince me to stay. And, as always, I would let you. Please take care of yourself while I'm gone. Don't drink or smoke too much, because when I return, I hope to renew my promise and take my place again by your family's side, if you'll still have me. Anya. P.S. I left a note for Santiago, but I didn't think Ernesto would want to hear from me. Despite that, please tell him I'm sorry. As soon as Ernesto read the last words, his eyes widened and he muttered, Mierda! He dropped the note on the floor, ignoring Javier's angry shout, and ran down the hallway to his son's room. The words, P.S. I've left a note for Santiago, echoed in his mind. This was exactly what he didn't want Santiago to see. He didn't want his son to have any further connection to that demoness. He didn't need Santiago to be any more confused than he already was. Ernesto had to find that note and destroy it before Santiago could see it.